what does God want from us? He went through a lot of trouble to make us. He spent 6 days making us and the universe that we live in. And, if I took 6 days to make something, I would want something to show at the end of it. And that's just me, and I can't do anything. So God and all his abilities, he must have had high expectations. So also, he not only went to the trouble of making us, he went through a whole palaver in heaven, the angels fell, probably his highest angel fell as well. All for what? I think it was because God wanted to make us. And that's what the devil, or he was then an angel, and his other angels, they didn't like that idea. They wanted to be God's children. So, why did he bother? Was it so that we could just go around and be nice to each other? Did he make the human race so we can just all be nice? No. He made us because he wanted children who would honour him and worship him and love him and have a relationship and a friendship with him. That's what God wants from us. That's what he wanted from us. That's why he made us, and he made us in his image so that he could have a relationship with us. So, he wants us to believe in him even though the whole world tells us that we're mad. And nowadays, the whole world does think that if you're a Christian, most of them think that we're almost like we're, Neanderthals or something, that we don't understand science and technology and all these modern things that are all thought of now. They think we're just burying our heads in the sand and just believing blindly in some old 2,000 or 4,000 year old book. So I think God likes it when we stand up for our faith, and that against all of the odds, we swim against the tide. Yeah. That's like that fish. And, that's, I think, what God loves in us. Amen. So, we've got 32 pages here. I hope you brought your pyjamas. Because my last talk was 13 pages and it would finish very quickly, so I thought this time I'm not going to have that. So, that's what God wants. He wants us to love him. He doesn't really want our good works. And he actually doesn't need our good works, and he doesn't need our money. He can do it all himself if he wanted to, but he doesn't need them. I remember my first pastor, Sam Yegnazar. He was the pastor of the church we went to when I first became a Christian, actually 25 years ago. And that was the time in the early 90s when the national lottery started. Before there was no lottery. Then one day there was a big fanfare and the national lottery, and everybody got excited about it, and there was a big buzz. And many people were just going and buying lottery tickets, and it seemed like the normal thing to do, and including lots of Christians. And in the Iranian church, I know that there was an issue about this, and so he did a sermon once about the lottery, believe it or not. And in those days, they were £1 each tickets. I don't know how much they are now, but they're £1 each. They're £2 now. It's inflation. 100% inflation in 20 years. And still you don't win anything. But basically, if you're wanting to improve your life by buying a lottery ticket, that means you're putting your hope in chance. And God doesn't really want that. He wants us to put our trust in him. If we need something, we ask him, not that we just do a chance thing. So, I remember, and many Christians also were saying, if I win, I'll give half the money to the church, and things like this. And, people were praying, even, in their prayers, they would say, they were doing deals with God in their prayers, saying what a good idea it was if they won. They said, Lord, bless my lottery number so that I win. I want to be a good steward for my £1, to multiply it, Lord. It's not for myself I ask this, it's not greed. To show unselfness, I'll give half. No, 75% to the church. It will bless me, it will bless your kingdom. Do this and everyone's a winner. I place in your mighty name, Amen. We were trying to persuade God what a good idea it would be for him to let us win so we could bless his church, and this is the kind of thing. But my pastor Sam said, if you need or want something, just ask God. He doesn't need you to finance it for him. He doesn't need anything. So that's what I think we have to remember. But what he does want from us is what he's doing. He wants our praise, our love, our worship, our devotion, and loving God, and the fruit that comes from loving God is the currency that God accepts. That's the currency that he deals in. If you have Swiss francs, they have great value in Switzerland. But if you take them to America, they don't have very much value there. Likewise, good works, they have much value here on earth, but in heaven, unfortunately, they don't have very much value. The currency there is loving God. And the richer you will be there, the more you love God. In Isaiah 64:6, the Bible tells us, should I go on to the next slide? Yes, I should. Yes, the Bible tells us that good works are like filthy rags. Of course, it's right that we try to help others and be generous with what God has blessed us with, be that money or talent or anything that we have to offer. But in and of themselves, these good works, these generosity and acts of kindness go no way in helping us restore the position that we had with God, which we've now lost. It doesn't help that at all. Sin has removed us from God's side, and good works can never put us back again. And that's what it's important that we understand. And it never can. No matter what we do, it will never restore us in itself back to God. Yet time and time again, the Bible shows us that God is pleased when people who love him do good works. It's everywhere. But the key point is that it's the good works by people that love him. If you love him, your good works are joy to him. If you don't love him, then all your good works, no matter what they are, no matter how many poor you save and hungry you feed and whatever you do, it's of no interest to God, because he's not looking at that. If God wants to help these people, he can help them himself instantly. That's not what he's looking for us. He wants us to love him. So if we are doing good works when we don't love him, that means we're not doing them for him, we're just doing them for ourselves, to make ourselves feel better. It's all pride at the end of the day, I suppose. When we get pleasure from helping others, we are getting pleasure from helping others. We feel good about ourselves. We feel that, we are good people. And that is totally against what God wants us to feel, because he wants us to know that we in ourselves can't be good enough for him. It's only he that can raise us and make us good enough to be at a level that we can have a relationship with him. And it's that humility that we have to learn. If someone who hates you and at every opportunity rejects you and says bad things about you, but draws a beautiful picture of a tree and presents it to you, you would want to throw it in the bin. But it has no value to you because of the sentiment behind it. But if a 5-year-old who loves you and draws an unrecognizable scribble of a tree with crayon like that, you would cherish it and stick it on your fridge door for all to see. It's not the work itself that has the value, but the affection you feel from whoever presents it to you. So if we love God, no matter what rubbish works we do, once in a month going and helping in something, I don't know, that's sweet to Jesus to see that. So much more than spending your life in Africa, and if you don't love him. So, from us, good works are of value. And so you can't get out of it that easily, you still have to do some good works. The Bible is full of people who were recognized because of their good works. So Noah, for example, he was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God. Noah was a good man, and God commended him for that. And they were both righteous before God, walking blamelessly in the commandments and statutes of the Lord. Oh, I've missed out a line there. This is about Elizabeth and Zachariah, John the Baptist's mum and dad. It's missing from there for some reason, I don't know why. Yes, Zachariah and Elizabeth, they were rewarded with a son in their old age, and they were both righteous before God. So their good deeds did them, that had benefit to them. God was pleased with them and blessed them with a child. Christ was pleased with Mary's gift of perfume, a deed he called beautiful. Christ was also pleased with the widow's offering. He said about her 2 small coins, she put in more than all of them. So, indeed, you could say that the entire Hall of Faith, in Hebrews 11, there's a list of all the people that are highly regarded in God's eyes. And these are Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Rahab, Gideon, Jephthah. Didn't do much, but Jephthah's in there. Samson and David. So these all did good deeds, these people. Are they filthy rags to God? No. Yet these were not perfect people. They weren't wonderful people. They certainly had their flaws. Lisa said in her talk that Abraham, although he had considerable and undeniable faith, faith that was credited to him as righteousness, he wasn't perfect. Abraham wasn't perfect. Abraham was a coward, and he lied to save his life, I think twice. Isaac was easily tricked by his son. Jacob tricked his brother. Joseph tricked all his brothers. Moses killed a man in anger and was a bit blasé with God's instructions. Rahab was a prostitute. Gideon was in himself a coward. Jephthah, he was the one who made a stupid promise to God and said, I'll sacrifice to you the first thing that comes out of my door if I win this battle or something. And he ended up having to kill his own innocent daughter. Yet he, stupid as he was, foolish as he was, is in this hall of fame, let's call it that. You've got Samson, and where do we start with Samson? He didn't do much right, but he's in there. David, a man after God's heart, was a murderer and adulterer. So, there's more. These weren't perfect people. They are flawed human beings with their own problems, with their own, sinful desires. They're people just like us. They weren't perfect, yet God loved them, and he loved them so much, he uses them as an example to us that we should be like them. So we shouldn't try to think that, I'm only a this, I'm only a that, I can only do this, and all with my history, what I've done in the past, God can never accept me. Whatever you've done, I guarantee it's not as bad as what these guys have done. So I should point there. They've done much worse than probably any of you will ever do put together. So, and they're mentioned as being highly regarded human beings. Great men and women of God. Of course, we shouldn't be surprised that God is pleased with our good works, of the people that love him. In Hebrews it tells us, that's the top paragraph, it tells us, God is pleased with these works because they were done out of faith. They are good works generated from the work of God's own Spirit in the hearts of those that love him. Sure, they're not perfect works, they're always tainted by sin, but we cannot think for a moment that these good works merit salvation. They do not. But they are the work of God's own sons and daughters, and just like you would react to, say, for example, your child hoovering the carpet for you. They might do a rubbish job, but because it's your child and you love them, you're very pleased with them and you put up with it. Whereas if someone you didn't like so much, and a lazy housekeeper came and did it, for example, you'd say, look what they've done, they haven't done this very well. So that's how God is with us. And he delights in our good works because we're his children and he loves us. So to understand the intent of passages like Isaiah 64:6, the one about the filthy rags, it's filthy rags if we are just doing those good works in order to be self-righteous and to elevate ourselves. And also for us, it's good for us to know that God delights in our good works. It's encouragement for us. It's our it's only sometimes the only reward we get is knowing that God is happy with us when at work, in your office, or at your school gates, you're talking to other parents there, trying to do your best to show them the light, as it were. There's often no reward in things like this. So it's refreshing for our spirits to know that our Father in heaven delights, even when there's no fruit that we can see, in doing his work. And these are the people that work tirelessly behind the scenes, and no one even knows that they do it. Because at the end of the day, what I think all Christians wish for is for them to do something and not to care whether or not anyone around them has noticed what they've done, but when they're standing before God in heaven, for Jesus to say to them, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." I think all of us here, that is our ultimate goal. That should be our goal when doing these good works, to hear that sentence from God and not to get praise here. So we don't do good works to earn our place in heaven. We do good works because we are grateful that we already have our place in heaven. And this is the thing. And the place in heaven and living with God is not very difficult to get. Jesus did all the hard work for us on the cross. Anyone, as long as they're human, which is most people, have their whole lifetime to make this one decision. They can make it even on their deathbed, and they will receive a full reward even on their deathbed. And this can only be because we do not earn our place. Because if we earned our place, then someone on their deathbed can't earn it. He wouldn't have time to. So it's a gift, and it's a gift to whoever accepts it, regardless of who we are and what we've done and what we will do. The thief on the cross probably didn't do one Bible study, he didn't do one jumble sale for the church, yet he believed that God loved him and God wanted to save him. And this was enough for Jesus to say to him, "Today you'll be with me in paradise." And that's all. That's all you need to do. And this is also illustrated in Jesus' parable of the vineyard workers. That's Matthew 21-5. "For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. He agreed to pay them a denarius for a day and sent them to his vineyard. About 9 in the morning he went out and saw others standing in the marketplace doing nothing. He told them, 'You also go and work in my vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right.' So they went. He went out again about noon, and about 3 in the afternoon, and did the same thing. About 5 in the afternoon, he went out and found still others standing around. He asked them,
Next slide.
I'm sorry. About 5 in the afternoon, he went out and still found others standing around. He asked them, 'Why have you been standing here all day doing nothing?' 'Because no one has hired us,' they answered. He said to them, 'You also go and work in my vineyard.' So these are 5 in the afternoon. When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, 'Call the workers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last ones hired and going on to the first.' The workers who were hired about 5 in the afternoon came and each received a denarius. So when those came who were hired first, they expected to receive even more. But each one of them also received a denarius. When they received it, they began to grumble against the landowner. 'These who were hired last worked only 1 hour,' they said, 'and you have made them equal to us, who have borne the burden of the work and the heat of the day.' But he answered one of them, 'I'm not being unfair to you, friend. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius? Take your pay and go. I want to give the one who was hired last the same as I gave you. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Or are you envious because I am generous?" Our God is a generous God, and he will give a wonderful prize to all that love him. Us squabbling why a Victorian missionary who is killed will get the same reward as a lifelong criminal who becomes a Christian on his deathbed. It's like someone who finds a £20 note on the floor and still upset that why it wasn't a 50. It's like that. We actually won't get the same though. The missionary will be very highly rewarded in other ways, but I guarantee the deathbed Christian will have nothing to complain about when he gets his reward. So rejoice, we've been given a prize of great value, and that prize lasts forever. So don't begrudge anyone else from getting a prize just because you think you deserve it better than them. The level of our undeservedness is a big deal to us, but to God it's absolutely meaningless. Another parable that illustrates this is the prodigal son. You all know it, but I'll read it anyway. Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and squandered his wealth with wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out as a citizen of that country, who set him in his field to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants?'" Sorry, is this the right slide? Okay. "How many of my hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your servants.' So he got up and went to his father, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring a fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate, for this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of his servants and asked him what was going on. 'Your brother has come,' he replied, 'and your father has killed a fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound.' The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, 'Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and have never disobeyed your orders. You never gave me a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours,'" he doesn't call him his brother, it says this son of yours, he's detached himself from his brother. "When this son of yours squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him. 'My son,' the father said, 'you are always with me and everything I have is yours.' But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and he is alive again. He was lost and is found." The older brother was so upset at this inheritance that had to be the same as his brothers who he thought deserved less. The father didn't care who deserved what. He was just ecstatic to be able to give them both a reward that both of them didn't deserve. What's also important to remember is that this reward that we get doesn't start when we're dead. It starts the moment we give our hearts to Christ. It is at that point we become his beloved children. And from that point that our inheritance is available to us. We become born again. We were hairdressers or builders. Now we are miracle-working royalty who also happen to be hairdressers and builders. And these occupations, all opportunities for us to try and spread the good news that we have. So the moment that we are born again, that's when we become citizens of heaven. We just happen to be still living on earth. Like an American who's in Africa, he or she is far from home, but if they need help, because they're American citizens, the whole resources of America are available to them. If they are kidnapped or wrongfully arrested, or whatever, the full force of the American military, maybe, and even the President himself, could be mobilized to help them. These are the benefits of being a citizen of a great place and a great country. And the greater the place, the greater the benefits. I remember a preacher called David Hathaway. From 1961 to 1972, he smuggled Bibles into the former Soviet Union and Eastern Europe. He delivered more than 1,500 Bibles. 150,000 Bibles. The biggest smuggling operation was planned for June 1972. The bus was loaded in Germany and the next day would cross into Czechoslovakia. Then Czechoslovakia was Sorry? It was one country, and it was under the Soviet Union, so they were communist. Atheism was what was allowed. On the borders of Czechoslovakia, customs discovered a secret compartment in the bus with 5,000 Russian Bibles, as well as some leaflets, which were just Christian, but they were deemed to be political. He was arrested and accused of committing offences of attempted sedition, don't know what that means, and attempted violation of customs regulations. What's sedition like? I suppose it's like treason?
Planning to overthrow the state.
Oh, I see. Planning to overthrow the state. Okay, thank you. He was tortured and he was found guilty, and he was sentenced to 5 years in prison in Czechoslovakia in 1972. But he served less than a year of his sentence. In 1973, he was released at the request of the then UK Prime Minister Harold Wilson, who is here pictured with him.
I think he flew to get him out.
He went there. Okay, so the Prime Minister personally negotiated his release. So if David Hathaway wasn't a citizen of the United Kingdom, he would have had the resources and the influence of the United Kingdom government, even the Prime Minister himself, to go and save him. So that's the benefit of being part of a great kingdom, the United Kingdom. And God's kingdom is much higher than the United Kingdom. And the full force of heaven is available to us. But if that American citizen didn't know that he was an American citizen, he wouldn't benefit from the kingdom that he's part of. He would just have to live through and struggle just like anybody else, a citizen of, I don't know, the Central African Republic or somewhere which is having difficulties. So let us not be like many Christians to live on earth accepting whatever life throws at us. We don't have to. Because for Christians, God is never the author of our hardship. Our hardship is always from Satan. Non-Christians have no choice but to live with the consequences of living in a fallen world. And sometimes they have to deal also with God's anger. But we should always remember that as well as being saved, we have access to great power that comes through our faith. We may not see the effect of this power straight away, but our salvation is free, but accessing this power, we have to do something for it. So we don't have to do anything for our salvation, but we have to do something for our power. Believing, it's faith, that's it. That's it. Now. Okay. One preacher, I think it was Andrew Womack, but if one thinks I was wrong, so I must be wrong. But I'm pretty sure I was sitting here, this used to be our living room, and I was sitting here and watching on TV, and it was him, this is about 10, 15 years ago, before everyone had even heard of him. He said that, I'll read it out, he was a young pastor in a church living in Texas. God told him he was going to have a healing ministry. He was so excited. He enthusiastically organised the healing conference and invited all the sick in the area to come and experience the miraculous healing power of God, because he's Texan. He knew he needed faith, and he had it. He was enthusiastic. He knew God's power, and he believed it with all his heart that the people who came would be healed in Jesus' mighty name. He remembered being so excited when the sick came. The blind, the crippled in wheelchairs. He thought, these wheelchairs, these vehicular instruments of the devil that advertise Satan's power over us. They'll soon be piled up in the corner as the sick no longer will need them. He prayed fervently and with much faith for so many that weekend. He said the results astonished him. Not one person got healed. Not even a short leg that he never knew about didn't get lengthened. Nothing at all. Many would have given up, but not him. He had faith that God would honour his promise, and he persevered. Undeterred by his 100% failure record, he boldly proclaimed that the sick would get healed, and nobody did. He said people who loved him, who cared about his reputation and his future, told him he should perhaps give up, and maybe this word wasn't from God after all. But he was as stubborn as a mule, and he carried on. He said it was probably a few years later, after thousands of humiliating failures, that he started to see things happening. And now he has a great healing ministry.
I think actually that was John Newton.
Was it? Okay then, John. So what, Yvonne was right, was she?
I don't know why.
I'll talk to you later privately, don't say it in front of her. on the end of it.
I know that John Wimber had exactly.
It was like, might have been him then. Well, there's some that say Andrew O'Mac, John Wimber. It's easy to confuse the two. Heidi Baker had a similar story. I thought I might be wrong here too, but then Yvonne confirmed that it was her, so I must be right. This is nice because I'm going to read a bit from her book, but it repeats my other point too. I've got the book here. That's what it looks like, but I've written it in big writing here. Okay, for many years, this is Heidi Baker. She has a ministry in Mozambique, and I think she started 10,000 churches there, or she just has a, whatever the number is, but it's an amazing thing. She said, for many years I longed to witness healing miracles for the blind to see, the deaf to hear, the dumb to speak, and the cripples to walk. I was living in the slums and working with the poorest people I could find. So I saw these kinds of afflictions often. My heart was continually broken for them. Eventually, I received a promise from the Lord that the blind would see and my nation would be transformed. For a year after this, I prayed for every single blind person I found. Not one of them saw. But I did not give up. I knew I had been overshadowed for this purpose. I had faith, so did my husband and my children. I kept looking for more and more blind people. I would ask for them to come forward, and at every meeting, if I saw one by the road, I would leap out of my truck and lay my hands on them. Almost everyone I prayed for got saved, but for the longest time, not one gained vision. And one day, it began to happen. I was in a dark mud hut church in central Mozambique, laying my hands on an old blind lady. Her eyes were clouded. The irises and pupils today, I wonder why that's what it's called, Iris Ministries, her charity? I don't know. Her irises and pupils totally white. Suddenly, as I was praying for her, she fell down on the dirt floor. I watched her eyes go from white to grey, and then to dark shiny brown. After all the years of hoping, crying and trying, I witnessed what I had waited for. The woman could see. Delighted beyond words, I asked her, "What's your name?" She said, "Mama Ida." "My name is Mama Ida too," I exclaimed. The Portuguese version of the name Heidi is Ida, so this is what I am called here at home in Mozambique. There were about 40 people in church. Soon everybody started yelling and screaming, "Mama Ida can see." That night we went to another mud hut church in a different village. They brought an elderly woman who had been blind since she was 8 years old. I prayed for her and I wept as I held her. Then she interrupted me, screaming, "You're wearing a black shirt!" Like me. Her eyes were opened. We went outside and a crowd started to gather around her. Very soon the village became filled with yelling and running and dancing. As it so happened, her name was Ida too. This was very strange. For the second day in a row, a new village rang with the cries of "Ida can see! Ida can see!" The day after this, we went to yet a third village in a place called Chimou. This time a large crowd came as usual. After preaching, I asked them to bring me the blind, deaf and disabled. A young boy dressed in rags led a blind woman to me through the crowd. She was elderly like the two women before. We prayed. The presence of God came. The woman fell down, and as she was touched by the Spirit and began to cry, I can see, she cried. As before, the crowd grew loud and excited. The news spread as quickly as people could shout. By now, I was almost afraid to ask her what her name was. Ida, she said. In 3 days, this was the third blind lady with the same name as mine to receive her sight. When I asked Jesus what this meant, I thought he would say something complimentary. Perhaps he would tell me I was coming into my healing anointing. Perhaps I had received the mantle of some famous and anointed healing evangelist, Catherine Kuhlman or an Amy McPherson. What I actually felt from the Lord shocked me. I felt him say I was blind. I didn't enjoy hearing that. Stunned, I told God, "But I'm a minister. I've been sharing about Jesus since I was 16, and I live with the poor." Twice more I sensed the Lord tell me I was blind. I fell apart. I threw my hands over my face and sobbed. I begged God to open my eyes and let me see. He did. In my spirit, I suddenly saw the Western and Eastern bride of Christ, countless outwardly rich churches that are in truth badly malnourished. I saw the fathers, many children in affluent nations, trying to live on a few stray crumbs from his table each day, though they are called to eat their fill from the heavenly realms of glory. They don't realize what they have. An incredible feast is laid out for them, yet they remain at the edge of starvation. These are the rich churches in America. I saw people clothed wealthily on the outside, yet spiritually dressed in rags. So the Bible holds so much promise for us if we have enough faith. These are biblical miracles that are happening today. We don't see it too much here in the West, but they are happening, and they are going to happen more. You're right, Sean.
I see it every day.
Good. We should all see it every day, because it can happen every day. And if we think that we can see them every day, we will see them every day. If we feel that these things are only in the past, then they will only be in the past. It's up to us. And God to Heidi gave her a special message in that he made sure that the ladies that were blind all had her same name. He wanted her to know that this is something that is something about her. It's personal to her. And that, I think, touched her a lot. So, we know that with faith we can move a mountain. It says that in Matthew 17:14-20. I'll read that. When they came, is it up there?
Yeah.
Yes. When they came to the crowd, a man approached Jesus and knelt before him. "Lord, have mercy on my son," he said. "He has seizures and is suffering greatly. He often falls into the fire or into the water. I brought him to your disciples, but they could not heal him." "You unbelieving and perverse nation," Jesus replied. "How long can I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy here to me." Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of the boy, and he was healed at that moment. Then the disciples came to Jesus in private and asked, "Why couldn't we drive it out?" He replied, "Because you have so little faith. Truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you." We think we have faith, but do we really? When we press the brake pedal in a car, how much faith do we have that that car will stop? 100% faith. Although there are many things that could stop it from working, we know from personal experience that because every time in the past we've pressed it stopped, that the next time it will stop too. Maybe one time we press it and it didn't stop, we wouldn't have 100% faith, but we'd still have 99.9% faith. When our faith in prayer is as strong as the faith we have in the brakes of our car, then we might start seeing miracles. I'm not saying that if you don't see miracles, it's because you don't have enough faith. That's not true. God is sovereign and is in the best position to decide whether or not to answer our prayers. Only He knows the big picture. So it's certainly not a lack of faith. Sometimes it is, but not all of the time. Billy Graham is a great man of God. I'm sure you've all heard of him. His wife Ruth once said about prayer, "God has not always answered my prayers. If He had, I would have married the wrong man several times." So God always hears your prayers, but thankfully He doesn't always give us what we ask for. He knows better. We have to trust that if our prayers aren't answered, there must be a good reason for it. We have to accept it and keep on asking in hope, and we have to keep on asking in hopeful expectation that one time it will be the right time or the right prayer. Someone once said, "The great tragedy of Christian life is not unanswered prayer, but unoffered prayer." We should be persistent. There is a parable of the persistent widow. That's in Luke 18, 1-8. Then Jesus told his disciples a parable to show them that they should always pray and not give up. He said, "A certain town where there was a judge who neither feared God nor cared what people thought. And there was a widow in that town who kept coming to him with a plea, 'Grant me justice against my adversary.' For some time he refused, but finally he said to himself, 'Even though I don't fear God or care what people think, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will see that she gets justice, so that she won't even eventually come back and attack me.' And the Lord said, 'Listen to what this judge says.' And will not God bring about justice for his chosen ones who cry out to him day and night? Will he keep putting them off? I tell you, he will see that they get justice, and quickly. So Jesus wanted us to be persistent. Even though we don't get our answer straight away, he wants us to keep on trying, like Andrew Womack or John Wimber did, or Heidi Baker did, and like we do. We should be persistent. Also, the Canaanite woman who asked Jesus for healing, she was unshakably persistent. This is in Matthew 15:22-28. A Canaanite woman from the vicinity came to him, crying out, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is demon-possessed and suffers terribly." Jesus said, not an answer. Jesus did not answer a word. So his disciples came to him and urged him, "Send her away. She keeps crying after us." He answered, "I was sent here only for the lost sheep of Israel," he said to her. The woman came and knelt before him. "Lord, help me," she said. He replied, "It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs." "Yes, it is, Lord," she said. "Even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Then Jesus said to her, "Woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted." And her daughter was healed at that moment. God is not a genie that has to perform. We must remember that if he says, if we ask, he will provide. It is our duty to ask him. And with full expectation, no matter how big or serious a problem is, we have to expect that he can, and he can fix it. We don't even have to worry about it being a reasonable request. King David had many wives. 8 of them are named in the Bible, but he said he had many more. His son Solomon had over 1,000 wives. He wanted another, and she was called Bathsheba. You all know the story. And he conspired to get her using his devious ways with terrible consequences. Later, when challenged, God didn't say to him, "Wasn't 800 wives enough?" No, God didn't say that. God said, "And if all this had been too little, I would have given you even more." Our God is a generous God, and he loves us and he wants us to have our heart's desire. Just like those of us with children want them to enjoy life, God would want us to enjoy it too. We shouldn't shy away from asking too much. I think the more outrageous we are in what we ask him with faith, the more pleased he is with us, because he knows that we then believe the full extent of his power. Persistent faith is the key. In so many of Jesus' miracles, he tells the happy recipients that their faith was instrumental in the miracle. Of course, Jesus also healed people without them having any faith. Lazarus was already dead. It wouldn't have been difficult for him to have much faith, but God also heals by compassion. And Jesus had compassion on them and touched their eyes. Immediately they received their sight and followed him. That's in Matthew 20:34. God wants us to have faith, because then anything is possible and we can have hope. Hope is what keeps us going, and the most sorry people in this world aren't those in the worst situations, it's those who don't have hope. You can be a millionaire, successful, and not have hope, and you're a miserable person. So we can be glad that we are children of an awesome God who made us and has shown he loves us by suffering and dying for us. That's the proof. He would have done that if he wouldn't have done that if he didn't care about us. So we can feel safe and secure in the knowledge that he is watching over us. And that we can ask him expectantly not only what we need and not only what we want, but also what our heart desires, and knowing that it will give him pleasure to answer our most outrageous prayers. So thank you, Lord, for being so good. We want to worship our awesome God, who is generous and loving and has provided everything for us. We just have to ask him, and we will receive it, because he said that we would. So we have to always make sure that we do not limit what God can do because we haven't asked him. So let's worship the Lord. Thank you.